Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Digital Transformation Bytes, the podcast that covers the variety of digital transformation in the industrial and working world. Today, I'm really pleased to say I've been joined by Jason Stone, who is founder of Safer View XR. Say hello, Jason.
Hello, everyone.
Excellent, Jason. I think to get going today, I think it'd be good just to kind of you share a bit about yourself, a bit about your background, and a little bit about Safe Review or XR. That'd be a good way to start off. So, Jason, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Bradley. Yeah, so I've worked across health and safety when I first moved over to the UK, so across several roles. Firstly, when I first moved, I worked for a company called Exact, where we probably brought to market one of the UK's very first online health and safety tools. It was a repository of industry-specific risk assessments, all the different types of assessments, COSH assessments, RAMs, etc., that are needed by various industries and packaged up nice and neatly for them to be able to conduct their sort of own health and safety requirements and audits in-house. Between that, I then went off to work a little bit in hardware and ISV, so a bit deeper into the technology world. And more recently, I've worked with a no-code application to ideate and build and sort of market their health and safety offering, which was obviously more specific and more bespoke to individual clients' needs. Again, across all the different risk assessments, COSH assessments, RAMs, and all the different requirements that under health and safety regulation. So that sort of led me to create SaferView XR, which is sort of now bringing in the XR, the mixed reality, into the world of safety to enable businesses to add that extra layer of safety to their frontline staff. So yeah, I'm glad to be able to talk with yourself today about that.
Yeah, and an area we both share. As you know, we work in XR as well. I work with XR in a variety of ways, in a variety of digital transformation. And I think, yeah, Jason, that's always a good starting point. I think digital transformation means so much to so many people, and it does mean it's a very wide phrase, isn't it? It is a very wide phrase. But what does it mean to you? What does digital transformation mean to you, and what you do?
Well, for me, it's about really enhancing and improving, and I suppose digitizing those existing process and practice that organisations have to better support their individual needs. So it's not really maybe a one fits all requirement, but how do you enable that digitization or digitization as a whole to really allow them to get better return on what they're doing. With me, it's a specific tilt towards safety, but also not only that at the front end, sort of that making the workforce safer, but also allowing better access to information and resources for all stakeholders down the line.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think it is data. I think there's a couple of areas that especially in safety, digital transformation, you can really lock processes down and create an auditability around them. So obviously you can see the processes are not only being done, but they're given the care they should have. And safety is that, but I think safety is a joint responsibility. It is a responsibility of the business, we know, but people should take their time on these things when they're doing just even a basic point of work risk assessment. In some industries, a risk assessment could be a very critical thing for injury. Rail, oil and gas, energy, all these areas and all these sectors have got massive machinery assets. There are lots of different hazards that can crop up at any time in real time. But like you said, it is the data and information that's being passed down the lean exercises and processes that can be enhanced dramatically from the information and data created. So it is interesting. It's such a critical part of the working life this at the moment. But you mentioned the digital transformation side of things, and you mentioned then XR. For anyone who's new to maybe this podcast, XR covers a range of style of realities as well. Not just virtual reality, which is probably the most popular one, and I'm sure a few people have not caught on to the AR side of things now with Apple's release, and that has come pretty much since our last podcast. So, but there's a whole host of AR devices and XR devices out there. In what ways do you see an XR contribute to digital transformation, especially in health and safety?
Well, especially when you've got, I suppose I could say that's across several fronts, but it's not certainly not limited to engagement and culture, but also connecting your workers with the required information and documentation they have to the task or to the asset they're inspecting, for example. So more so, you're not buried in a traditional device. So you might be talking about a mobile phone or a tablet,
Yeah.
but able to wear something with your hands free, have maybe verbal instruction, be able to talk live on that, but still be able to have a clear view of what's happening around you, because awareness is key to safety. Being aware when you walk onto a site or when you go to inspect an asset, you need to be aware of your surroundings, especially if that surrounding is maybe a more hazardous surrounding, for example, on a rail network or in an oil refinery or something like that. So, I do see that being the first main point there, that, being able to make staff aware of their surroundings while giving them the correct guidance and information and tools to complete that task at the time, to be one of the main benefits of switching to the likes of augmented reality or mixed reality.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, and I think you can mix up the tech. So people listening don't you don't have to have a headset for every individual use case if you digitally transform. But like you talk about awareness in environments, and we mentioned it's ever changing environments, isn't it? You think the amount of things that are going on in industrial factories, a construction site, and rail maintenance on rail tracks that are technically still live, and people are still using areas of the rail and that sort of thing. So it is interesting to really, when you're engaging with businesses and you're talking about health and safety, you're talking about digital transformation, to really find those specific use cases, I guess, that are really focused on hands-free and keeping that awareness.
That's 100% correct. It has to be the right device and the right solution for the right use case, and that's fundamental to creating a bit more safety and also to creating a bit more engagement on the work site. You don't want somebody high up, maybe working on a wind turbine, wearing a VR headset with no
Yeah.
ability to sort of see what's going on around them or their surroundings. So yeah, fundamental to safety with XR is the right mix, and fundamentally getting the right solution on that right device for the
Yeah.
right task. So you're right. Using a mobile phone, we might have a mix of a few headsets that the staff in more hazardous situations work. That doesn't mean the person in the office still can't use a laptop or a tablet, and somebody in not so much of a hazardous situation can't use a mobile phone to complete the necessary checks and balances also.
Yeah, because I suppose that's it, and it is mixing the tech with the right software, because then yeah, it's getting the right information to the right person at the right time. And you know, um, in my world, health and safety is playing a big part of digital transformation in work instructions, digital instructions, and those sorts of things. And what I'm seeing is obviously there's a lot of work around specific use cases, and those specific use cases are generally asset inspections and asset maintenance. So, it could be a wind turbine, could be a variety of fans, crane, rail checks, and those sorts of things, which are specific use cases that have a specific requirement there. But there's so much health and safety built around those style of inspections. And what I like about health and safety inspections for businesses where they can add that, I almost see those as transferable use cases, because those point of risk assessment, if you're in a larger organization and you build something specific, yes, it can be multiplied to maybe a variety of areas. But if you build your health and safety or your risk assessments around it, they're easily transferable across an organization.
Yes.
And those then can be adapted. They may be adjusted, because the same asset might not be in every place, but the fundamentals are there, are transferable quickly. I think it's a very, very good use cases. And one area that a business, I was always taught as a young salesperson, was people buy for three key reasons, and it's usually to increase the top line or the bottom line, or the other one is to reduce risk. And that is massive for businesses. Is that something you're seeing as well with these kind of use cases you're building? Is those transferable elements that can be passed across an organization?
Most certainly, and there's serious crossover, I suppose, when you're talking about, say, workflows or inspection workflows. Deviation is where a lot of risk does rear its head. For example, you might
Yeah.
go into an inspection workflow expecting it to be one thing, it then changes, and also with it does the risk change to maybe a different area, and that might be going from confined space to working at height. And the necessary risks need to be considered at that point. So where you can link those two fundamental, I suppose, workflow next to the safety considerations for that workflow are absolutely key in how things are moving forward. I mean, traditionally, when you look at health and safety, a lot of people will know if they've worked on a site or in a sort of commercial industrial area, it would have traditionally been checklists. So that would
Yeah.
have been with something where you tick a box to say, yes, I've read the instructions and now I'm going to say that I'm going to be safe in what I'm doing. And that's really sometimes where it used to end also, apart from maybe a poster in the kitchen or in the site office. So taking it that step further and bringing safety and information right to the person's eyesight or right to the person's front line vision is really where you can make them a little bit more accountable for what they're doing also. So for example, you might have someone working inside a confined space, inside a fuel tank, then having that information right there and available for them really does add an extra layer of safety, as well as, I suppose, enabling them to be the best they can and to be aware themselves.
Yeah, I do see it. I've seen it. The checklist, the ticking. The other one that gets me is the picture of someone wearing safety equipment, and the only question that they're being asked is, "Do you have the safety equipment?" Well, there's no auditability if anyone does have the right safety equipment to be on that site and that sort of thing. Don't get me wrong, they have their positive places, and they always have those styles of information, but both from a business risk and auditability point of view and an individual's point of view, it's this day and age, have you got the correct safety equipment? Take a photograph of yourself, take a video of yourself. You're saying that you do have it, and take accountability for that safety. I think that's such an important part now of digital transformation. But those brings us on to good points, because again, it's challenges that ignite opportunity in digital transformation, because businesses will have challenges, they will have issues they need to solve, and health and safety, if there is an issue or a challenge, it's usually come from some event, some sort of event that's caused it. What are the specific challenges you see regularly, in that health and safety area? And I suppose, how are you going about combating these issues with, what you're doing in XR and digital transformation?
I suppose there's a few factors that come into to challenge existing stakeholders, and that's first of all getting staff engaged in the safety process. And firstly, as I said, if you're looking at traditional paper methods and traditional checkbox exercises, then it's a little bit hard to engage workforces, especially as workforces get younger. You and I, being maybe a bit older, maybe more used to ticking a box and going through a paper-based checklist. The youth of today maybe are not so used to that. So being able to create a culture where they're using up-to-date devices, information, software, hardware to engage them in that culture of safety is fundamental to sort of really enhancing your safety process and overall procedures. You look at getting them a bit more immersed also in that technology, which is really important when you think about it. If you're being told to look at something right now, you're generally going to look at it. If you're told to do that before you begin a task, then maybe it slips your mind. And it's easy to do. We get, as human beings, we get focused on the task at hand, and we put ourselves into that. So having those real reminders and real up-to-date sort of alerts and things is really important. I suppose the other challenge can be cost. You look at industry and businesses of all shapes and sizes. Smaller businesses might not be able to go out and get a top end software product or a top end headset to do the tasks that they need, so cost can be a real challenge to them. So it's not about going out and buying a headset for every staff member or software for every staff member. It's making sure where that the increased hazard or the requirement for XR and the right software together are in place, are really going to solve that issue for you. So it really is about finding the right thing. I suppose thirdly, you've got at a lot of large organizations, you've got health and safety professionals in place, and they've gone and done their training, their NEBOSH in the UK or whatever it might be, which makes them what we would call well, first of all, I should say you've got the responsible person in an organization, and then you've got the appropriate person with the necessary skills, knowledge, and experience to do the health and safety regulation. So they've got their process, their procedure in place. So that can be a challenge to sort of take them on a digitization journey, and allow them to see the benefits to their role as opposed to the challenges to their role. It's not trying to
Yeah.
replace their expertise or knowledge, but enhance their expertise and knowledge and make sure people are more engaged with that safety culture that they're trying to put in place. So it's the sort of three challenges there. Obviously, culture, cost, and the actual digital transformation part of it is probably the third challenge, I would suggest.
There's some good points there. As I obviously, I think, as you know, what I do, I engage with a lot of businesses on digital transformation and work instructions and those sorts of things with Workflow Plus. And one of the things I found about the tick boxing exercise, and you bring up brought up a really good point, is it's done after the process. So often, and we talked about this with a few organizations, large organizations, that the person is focused on the process. We are human beings. It's Friday afternoon. I just want to get it done, want to move on, go and have my weekend. Oh, I've forgotten to do my risk assessment, or I've forgotten to do this. Right, I'll just quickly go through it, tick the boxes, tick the boxes. Which in itself isn't great. It's not great. Digital transformation makes you see the order of the work being completed. So everything's time stamped. Everything picks up. Processes are picked up, but not only the processes, the steps in processes are picked up with time and that sort of thing. The other thing as well is they're geo-tracked. So obviously, what we do is obviously, again, let's make sure the process wasn't done at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I've remembered at 5 o'clock. I'm back in the office or I'm halfway home. Hang on a minute. One stage of the process, which was the first stage, has been done on one side of the country, and it's the other side was done on the other side of the country. So that's massive. And because things are done like that and they're done retrospectively, and that, obviously, if there is an issue, it is the company that picks up the issue. And it's a very expensive thing to pick up as well. It's the time that goes into it, the money, putting your finger on the right information, which then brings me on to like the other point you were making there, and something I've seen on a lot of risks, a lot of business cases I've worked on with organizations is if it is still paper and pen based, or if it is then produced in separate Word files, spreadsheets, and that sort of thing. There's no continuity, and it's very, very, very difficult to put your finger on the information you need for that problem, because larger organizations have thousands of processes being done a month. And luckily in life, there isn't accidents every single day because of health and safety professionals and because the processes, and most time people are very vigilant of the issue. But when it does happen, it then becomes a very costly and timely episode to then find the right information. And what I found for a lot of organizations is if there is a question of risk, and a question of risk between the individual and the business, because the business can't find the correct information and the correct accountability, the business ends up settling maybe financially with the employee or whoever, and it costs them even more money. So not only have they spent all that time and money, so it is that, yes, it costs a bit of money to get set up, and yes, it does cost a little bit of money to get these things, but if you're finding the right processes, you're finding the right information, and then you look at it on the cause and effect of what you're achieving, there's time and money to be saved there, I feel.
That's right. And under legislation, if you're the responsible person at an organization, i.e. the head of the company, and somebody injures themselves, that you're responsible for that. And look, there's no way you can always remove risk, but you can certainly mitigate it. And being able to prove that you've done everything possible to mitigate that risk is fundamental to dealing with, for example, in the UK, the health and safety executive. The first thing they would do if an incident happened, they came to inspect, was to say, well, what did you do to prevent that or to mitigate that risk? And if you haven't got the right documentation or the accessibility to that documentation, it's very hard to then say, well, we did all the right steps. We've used the software that made the person go through the method statement before they did the task. We've done the right risk assessments associated to the risks that are there, and you can produce all that, then you've really done all you can. There's always going to be the case where people choose to ignore everything you've done as an employer for them and still take a risk. Well, you can now, you can really prove that and say, well, we trained them, we gave them the correct training, we had the correct culture, we gave them the correct process to follow, the right PPE, the right safety equipment, for example, but still, the accident happened. And avoiding the financial cost is one thing, but really avoiding the cost of someone being hurt or even
Yeah.
worse, and not making it home to their family that night, is probably the real fundamental thing that health and safety is about, is making people go home safe to their families. That's why we all go to work at the end of the day. So yeah, it really is. It really is something to consider for the responsible person at a company. You know, what steps are you taking to make people safe, and how can you prove that you've taken those steps? And digitization is fundamental to being able to do that.
Like you said, with that, the professional, the person who's responsible for health and safety across an organization, using these tools like Workflow Plus and those sorts of any sort of digital transformation process, is that live data. That live data allows you to see everything instantly. So when you talk about your near misses, or are we doing the process right? We need to go take a bit of a lean approach here, which is, this is the process we've got. We can see it's wrong. Let's change that. Oh, it's hard work, because we've then got to distribute that across the whole company. Digital transformation, all these things happen in a heartbeat. And again, if you have got registered users on apps and that are doing these processes, you can update processes, test these processes, and distribute these processes within an hour, within half an hour. Depends how big the process is, naturally. But yeah, those are the things then where you start to really drill down to making sure that everyone is safe. And there's so many cool tools you can use off the back of it. Things like business intelligence, Power BI. So you can see what the whole organization is doing in a very snapshot screen, and then drill down to the specific information instantly. And like I said, that will make that job. And like you said, you enhance the skill of that person. So it's not taking a skill away from that person. It's giving that person the ability to make changes in a heartbeat, and then make sure everyone's safe, both from a physical point of view and a financial point of view, which are those two challenges that come from industrial working. So no, like I said, I think we're in agreement there that you can really see where it applies to the individual, it applies to the employee to be safe, and it applies to the organization. So, when you're out in the market and you're speaking to these people, and what sort of feedback are you getting from users on the effectiveness of XR, and I suppose the software solutions you can use on it to improve processes?
I suppose uptake's the one key thing, isn't it? Because we bring a new
Yeah,
system or a bit of hardware into an organization, and the biggest challenge can often be getting staff to adopt it.
yeah,
So that's obviously one challenge that is in place, but really what the benefit that far outweighs that is having staff engaged. I mean, that is really what it comes down to: engaged in the task, engaged in the safety process. And the engagement that XR creates, or the right software on XR, I should say, creates, because it's not just a matter of putting a headset on, you've got to have the right solution to run behind that, is all about engagement. And as, again, I like to use as our workforce does get younger, it's easier to engage them by having technology at their fingertips. And again, the right tool for the right solution on the right bit of hardware is fundamental to that. So, where I see companies have chosen the right mix there, I see them getting far better benefit in transferable knowledge. It might even be not only the knowledge that's written down, but also tacit information. If you're using, solutions like remote support and things along those lines, being able to transfer that knowledge from one person to the next becomes much more readily available to you. So the big benefits there are really that connecting that worker to the information that they need. And I think in rail, in a lot of industries, they talk about work packs, and a work pack
yeah,
traditionally is a whole bit of paper
yeah,
folder,
yeah,
and you've got all the information you need. Well, imagine being able to call up the right schematic or the right task and workflow. That fundamentally makes someone safer, because they're not having to sort of guess their way through a process. But then also on top of that, bringing in the right safety considerations is where I'm seeing the biggest benefit. And really that engagement and enablement piece is also very strong. I'd also say, by digitizing all of that information, as we spoke about a little bit earlier, as AI becomes a big buzzword there. Imagine that you're now digitizing all this information, and AI can look across that information and start to make predictions or suggestions based on that task or based on the location you're in, to also start to predict safety incidents or avoid accidents. That also is a benefit, and I see that starting to be a push towards the AI in safety.
yeah.
And that's companies that are starting to adopt those are already seeing a reduction in accidents and incidents across their workforce by using it the right way, more importantly, and having everything digitized in the first place, because you can't use AI with a bunch of paper
Yeah,
in
yeah,
your cabinet.
that's the hammer and the nail, isn't it? You know, you speak to companies, they go, "Well, what do you do at the moment?" "Oh, they got a clipboard and pen, but we love AI." And it's, well, tell me about your data sets, and tell me about this, and that's the big challenge. And I think I've talked about I've had a few of these podcasts and talked to people which we're in the same sort of areas, but it's specific to every needs. And AI is a consistency, and I think a lot of the businesses who are embedded in digital transformation, looking at tech to support it and that sort of thing, they're the businesses that are going to get the big advantages over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, because they will bring the right style of AI to their business and be able to make those predictive on-site answers and questions, and support the processes will improve, the processes and speed will improve, whether that's maintaining the machine health and safety risk, because they've got the right data behind them to make not just decisions, because obviously data is available, but the data that fits your business and what you're seeing in your business, because you sell an asset and everyone uses an asset differently. No one uses it exactly the same. So whether that's machinery, and then obviously that asset could be used in a very small factory, it could be used in a massive factory. Health and safety changes dramatically based on those two principles. And all these little things, all that little data information starts to get collated over time by every process done, every risk assessment done. And that's where those businesses then will be able to make predictive analytics and then use AI to its advantage going forward. It's a great point. But coming back to users and the generational change, I think skills gap, something that I get covered off quite often. And one of the things that gets brought up is what do people expect? I've been working with colleges and those sorts of things with XR and digital workflows and digital processes. So it is the expectation of that next generation not to turn up and find a half-tuned pencil and a clipboard to do every process. They're expecting that digital information. They're expecting digital assets to help them, like you said, videos, photographs, remote expert schematics, drawings, site plans. Am I in the right place? It's a big place. This, am I in the right place? You should be here. All those things make a big difference, but adoption is about the user, in my opinion. I spend my time with organizations and we look at architecture, IT, infrastructure, hooking things together, business plans, a bit. But if people don't actually use it, if people don't use it in the jobs, then you're going to hit a brick wall pretty quickly. So, I'm the same, Jason. I love to engage with people early. And, we talked about the processes and how they can be changed and manipulated to fit a digital way of working, not the old school way of working. If you can get people to engage in that as early as possible, I always find adoption is a lot more successful there.
Yes, as humans, we go back to our behavior takes us back to what we know works.
Yeah.
And if all we knew that worked in the first place was ticking, a tick box
Yeah.
exercise, doing it before we even do the task, for example, then that's what we'll generally fall back to in times of need. So you're right, it is really about getting the right culture in place and the right understanding, and to enable to people to start to uptake technology in the right way. Because let's face it, it might be that you're looking at VR, and VR is great for training in as far as health and safety is concerned. You take someone through a dry run of what they're doing, the task they'll be doing. But when you start to look at more on site or in the actual task itself, when they're first going out to site to do something, having those prompts, reminders, asking the right questions, and more importantly, having the right process in place, i.e. step 1, step 2, step 3 done in the right order, also not only adds to safety, but adds to that worker's knowledge in the long run. So that's why SaferView XR first came into place, and why I'm obviously friends with Interware, because we both really feed off each other in that way, and we both see the benefit on both sides of the coin.
And I think that's it. I think, like you said, it's there's extras like remote support and that as well. If you're using an XR device, you can do it from the phone and tablet, of course. But I think that area really shines a bit more of a bit of an XR, AR device and that sort of thing, which is, if you are educating people, you can use digital workflows to educate people, because what we find is those senior engineers, critique a flow, and then it flows down to those junior engineers. So again, if that becomes one task, which is my health and safety element, the asset inspection, the completion, any sort of a health and safety process at the end to make the work environments okay after I've left, check it off. That just becomes the way they work, which is brilliant. But you mentioned remote support or remote expert, depending on how people word it, which is then having that ability to be completing a process, get 80% of the way through it, and then just say, I need help. I need help. And then being able to attach that person then straight to a senior engineer, senior health and safety, or some sort of subject matter expert, I suppose, depending on what you're doing, is massive for businesses and it's huge because again, it's great from an element of risk because that person's always got someone available, but it's the cost saving as well because you're not having to fly and drive your experts all around the country to help people. They're connecting from their home. If they work from home, the office, they can hook up from a desktop instantly and then support 10 people in the same time that they would have supported one with no travel costs as well. So it's all these benefits. And I think that's how people cover that skills gap, and that's how they get that younger generation engaged because it isn't only about the job they want to do, it's about the ease to do that job.
Absolutely, and as you suggested, they're not traveling to sites and not having an extra person on site increases safety, doesn't it too? So if,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
I, if I never have to leave my office, the biggest risk is my chair in the right position? Is my
yeah.
desk, is my screen at the right height, as opposed to all the trip hazards, the incidents that might occur if I was to go out on site? So not only cost, but you're making people a lot safer while you do it.
So as we talk about the future generation, let's talk about the future. How do you see the future, I suppose, of XR, digital transformation in H&S? How do you see it evolving? And I suppose it's for me, it's a two-pronged question, and it's the shorter term and the medium term. Our organization is going to kick on with this and they're really going to take it on board. The medium to long term to me is it's the only way of working. And when I speak to people and they ask me what I do, and I say it's the future of working, everyone will work this way, regardless if it's retail, whether it's NHS, people will use digital transformation to cover every aspect of what they do. How do you see it? How do you see it, I suppose, evolving and using digital transformation in H&S?
Yeah, I think short term, definitely looking for the right software tool, whatever that device be. It doesn't have to necessarily be on an XR device tomorrow. So short term, digitizing your health and safety documentation, your routines, your scheduled inspections, for example, all those fire assessments, COSH assessments, all those things need to be digitized fundamentally. So that's where I'm starting to see things push now, is that no longer is paperwork and the traditional way of doing things that the go-to solution for people when they're looking to adopt a process or put something in place. They're now starting to see, how can we digitize that process and how can we get the most out of it and make sure we're getting the biggest benefit possible for our investment. As we start to move forward, yes, devices become more appropriate. So what device is going to be the right device for me to have someone safer on site, or whether that be in the workflow they're doing or the actual safety considerations alongside that workflow. Can they see their surroundings? Do they need to see their surroundings? The more advanced step of that is definitely AI. For mine, is that imagine a world where you don't need to be so prescribed in your process. Imagine a world where if your task changes, the safety considerations change, and you maybe even use a little bit of AI to suggest things on top of that. Because let's face it, changing what you're doing or doing the same task over and over again are the two ways accidents happen, because you get complacent if you're doing the same task over and over again, or you go and have to switch tasks mid-journey because, I've realized that now it's no longer cleaning out this fuel tank, it's replacing the lining of a tank, for example. That then fundamentally changes your shift in focus to what you need to consider. Having
Yeah,
tools like AI to be able to bring that to the forefront and suggest it without the health and safety person being there to go, you've changed tasks now, you need to now look at this safety consideration, but bringing that right before their eyes at the right place. When I step foot onto this factory floor, for example, what are those safety considerations that I need to consider moving forward for the type of work or the persona that I have. So very much persona-based, task-based AI, being able to really look to predict, prevent, and if not mitigate any risks that might arise in that changing process. That's where I see things going anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think it's those short terms because like with platforms now and digital instruction and workflows, that you've got the quick ability to adjust what you're doing. So obviously, if you get halfway through something, you can tile templates and find another workflow and move on to it. But like you said, it's covering that. It's that 10% in between, which is the like you said, it's the I've done this before, I've done this before, I've done this before. I think that's where we were talking before at this stage. That I think time is the currency of digital transformation and safety and processes. And I've seen several examples of that, which is with certain machinery and the safety around it. Certain things have to happen for a certain amount of time. So obviously the videos, they've put videos into processes that last the same amount of time as it should be happening in real time. So you're on that step. So it tracks the amount of time you're on that step because that's the safety period to watch the machine run before you go and do the maintenance on it. So there's very, very smart ways of doing it now. But again, like you said, it's building up that information, building up that data, building up those processes now will allow you to then start to use prompts. And those prompts will be that you've got a problem. It could be A and B, based on the 10,000 processes that have been done before. This problem kind of gives you these two answers based on what we've seen. So it could be this, it could be that. And then, like you said, it is that quick change that, manually checked is great. And I think it's a massive step up at this time for where businesses are. But if it picks up that information and says, well, you've had to go in this direction now, you need to start here to assure you're safe again, or this is the process you need to do now, is a massive change for people. And I think it's where those organizations now need to really get that appetite to dive deep into their operations and really digital transformation now. And again, I think the tech will change, and I think there's a variety of XR devices now, even ones that are just Android emulators, which are interesting, which don't actually do anything, but they just emulate your screen onto your glasses, so you can see what you're doing, how you're doing it. Which again is, I don't really need to talk to it. I don't really need to pick up data like that. I can use my smart device, but when I'm engaged, I still need to see. And obviously, there's been a growth for the I suppose the binocular style headsets as well, which have the ability to flip screens up and down, so you can use them again when it's relevant and take them away when it's relevant. Which again, you can see that's, I suppose, the market evolving, and you see such big names, Apple being the latest, which probably not as industrial, but it just really gives you that value of AR. And if lots of devices are being created for a very, very good reason, because that market is going to be huge, mixing VR with assisted reality, with it augmented reality, and really going to make a difference for those businesses. So I suppose, with that in mind, do you feel that XR technology addresses the need for remote distributed training as well and support and those? Do you see it? Is it making that difference? We cover geographically because that was a massive thing we talked about before. XR and remote expert instantly makes the world a smaller place. And I don't mean just businesses that are spread across the UK. You could have experts in London supporting people in Tokyo. That's the way that works. But whatever areas do you think that's making a difference?
No, I think within the context of having the right, really getting the right mix again, having the right person with the right training skills and experience on the right device with the right software to do things, there has to be that equation met for real adoption and real fundamental benefit in the long run. I'm seeing it work across multiple industries, if I'm being honest with you. Anything from oil and gas to rail to asset management and inspection, facilities management and inspection. They're all starting to look at these types of technologies in multiple ways, and it can be quite daunting because you go out there and there's, as you said, there's multiple providers out there. So finding that right, whether it be binocular, monocular, mixed reality, whatever it might be, is really the challenge to businesses today. Of course, then once you've found the right technology, have you got the right software or solution to work across multiple devices? That's the real today challenge, I think. Obviously in a flooded marketplace, it can be difficult to find your way through. But using existing solutions that maybe work on a mobile phone, work on a tablet, work on a desktop computer, but also have the benefit of now working on XR is really where I'm seeing the most benefit come, because you've got your whole estate covered in that respect. Not every staff member needs an XR device, but some do. So finding the right tools again is really the big benefit. So I'm seeing it work across multiple industries in many different ways. For example, in the remote support, the first, you might go through training 100 times to see how to do a certain task. That might be scaling up the side of a building to do some cladding or whatever that might be. But the first time you go there, your mind goes blank. So bringing that training into the task and into the process again to ensure that all those checkpoints are made, all the right process is done, really is where I'm seeing things sort of today, I suppose.
I think it is. I think it's a good point. I think it is that software versus tech, isn't it? I think the software is that long-term stable, and then the tech builds around it based on the use cases. And I think the other thing was that our last question was about the future, and if anything has taught us over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years is the tech will evolve to match the need, and that will evolve quickly. And again, Apple, using Apple as their model, that's why there's so many apps on the Apple ones, because they will evolve their tech very, very quickly, like they always do. It's the software, the applications that make the hardware relevant,
Yes.
and then make sure that you've got the ability to upsell, which, as we know, Apple is so good at. And I think that's where you combine the two together. So I think, device agnostic is so important in these, and it's from a host of things as well. One of the things I see quite often now is sign off, and in stages. So I'm out doing the process, and Jason, you're my boss, and there is stages to go through. That could be the health and safety step. That could be stage one of this process of asset inspection or maintaining something, and then there's a final stage. And what we see now is they want senior members of staff to not. It's not so much about micromanaging and checking the work, but checking this stage has been properly. Is everything okay? Is everything safe? Again, in the past, you've got to go and find your senior member of staff, drag them over, but they can do that from desktop. So even though that person's on an XR device, and then another employee is using an Android tablet, and someone else is using an iOS tablet, they can do those processes, and then from a central point of view, that person can see that, quickly check it, quickly sign it off, and that person can go on to the next stage. And they don't even need to call them, because they can see in real time the stages they're doing. So I suppose all these little things are helping educate, they're helping change the way. And like I said, it's the financial benefit, which is driven, but again, by time, because everything's quicker but correct as well. So whether the process takes just as long, you've got the benefit of having the information at your fingertips. You're saving time in the long run, and there are processes, once they have been done and they have been correct, is far quicker to do. I suppose another question around health and safety, which is one that comes up so much with me on maintenance, asset inspection, that is locking down information. So we do have tick boxes, but sometimes we have to write things. Now, I'm a Bristolian, so you can pretty much guarantee this guy have no English in it at all. And what a lot of organizations come to me and say, well, we've got people spread across a geographical space, and then everyone describes the same thing slightly differently. And then information's put in illegible, and then some's legible. Some people will write 4 paragraphs, and the next person who's doing the same thing will write 4 words. Do you see the ability to give freedom of text, lock information down so you're getting specific answers? Is that important in health and safety as well?
Fundamentally, yeah. And I mean, that comes down to building it into your process, and I suppose the ultimate solution. So it might be that you need to ask 4 questions instead of 1. Please describe what happened. Well,
Yeah,
that's one way of putting it, but please describe what happened when you did this. Please describe what happened when you did that.
yeah,
Please describe what happened when you did that. And it all comes down to behavior. Hey, at the end of the day, where we do our jobs, and we safety becomes, unfortunately, in the past, a bit of an after consideration or a before
yeah.
consideration, even sometimes. So yeah, it really is about trying to lock people into giving the right answers to the right questions as well. And that can't always be done, by traditional methods. So digitization is so fundamental to creating the right behaviors and ensuring you get the right output from people, and making sure that the process that you digitize has all that involved. So it's not just a question of, did you do this? Well, did you do this to the level that's required of you, which is X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
Elicits a different answer than the first question. So really thinking of behavior of people when you digitize your process. And this is the big benefit here, because you get to change behavior. You get to address those sort of concerns of short writing or short descriptions. Was it done? Yes. Type thing. By digitizing the right way, and using, I suppose, in a business, most businesses have this expertise, have the right person, the competent person, I should say, to write these processes and understand the safety considerations. But often going to the right tool to digitize, well, they'll support you with things like that. They'll say you should be asking maybe 4 questions here, or you maybe ask the question at a different time in the process to make sure you get the right behavior involved and the right answer from that person, to make sure you've got a complete report at the end of the day.
And that's it. And I think that comes back to that point we made about for me, it gives the expert or the health and safety leader or whoever, it gives them superpowers. It's not restricting them. It's giving them that ability to go, I've looked at the data and I can see a hole right here. I can see that hole because, there's 14 people out of 20 that are either doing it wrong, describing it wrong, or something not quite right there. And then just having that ability to quickly pull that process out, pull that workflow out, edit it quickly, then test it. So you don't even have to affect the people that are working. Send it out to 2 or 3 people. They could sit at their desk with a phone, a tablet, XR device, and test it themselves, and then see if the information's locked down, and then pop that live, to that team of 20, and then review it. And if it isn't quite right, everything's version control because it's digital. So you
Yeah.
can then go back to the old version, critique again, and send out. And it is that activity, isn't it? It's active to make it better. To
And if
make it better, it's the same as we've always done it. I can make it better this way.
if you're dealing with, for example, an off-the-shelf product that says
Yeah,
this is how we deliver it to you, and to change it, you've got to come back to us and put in a feature
yeah,
request or a change request, and then it goes through a Kanban board in the software development cycle, and is eventually changed 2 weeks later, and they deliver you a MVP, and you see if that works, and it doesn't, so you have to give
yeah,
feedback. Having the right software solution that can adapt and change quickly and in an agile way is fundamental to that. So as you just said, it should be as easy as saying, well, I'll pop that into my flow right
yeah,
now, and I'll test it within the day, and I'll have it rolled out tomorrow. If
yeah,
you can leverage the right solution that can do those types of things be it agile, and be able to be changeable in a quick and in manner, an accurate manner, I should say, that is really important. So choosing, that's where it comes back to choosing the right mix again. Not just choosing an off-the-shelf risk assessment tool that's going to
yeah.
prescribe you, this is a risk assessment for fire, or this is a risk assessment for this. You need to be able to have the ability to change that in a very nice and agile way.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. It's not form filling. It isn't, you get form filler apps. That's not what we're doing. It's not interactive PDFs. It's not changing a static document to an electronic static document. It's about evolving the way you work to be as efficient and safe and reduce risk as much as you can. And that's a good point. So, look, what advice would you give to anyone listening to this, interested, I suppose, in using XR to enhance what they're going to do or how they're going to perform health and safety, not just XR, digital transformation as well? What advice would you give?
I'd say to really have a look at what's out there in the market and don't maybe settle for the first solution you find. So, where we'll just for example, talking about an off-the-shelf solution that's very rigid in its customized parameterization, how much you can change it, for example, as opposed to finding again the right headset. So I'd really suggest it's about considering what's out in the market and don't be scared to go and find that proof of concept and find the agility in the is the software solution you look at, are they willing to work across various headset types, various device types, or are they rigid? Is it a rigid thing that you're looking at? Look for flexibility in offering, because your processes will change, your workflows will change, your safety considerations and requirements will change. So being able to be agile with those processes and digitization of those processes is fundamental to getting what you need out of it and to making sure you're creating a net benefit to the whole process. So yeah, agility is probably a big thing there. Don't be afraid to sort of look at those ecosystems, which headsets, which software companies are working on which headsets, because while they're all Android products, there are slight difference between headset to headset. For example, to get voice to work on one headset might be a different SDK that you require, development required to another headset. So really making sure there's a combined picture, for example, does XYZ software work on XYZ headset, and do all the features that are available on that headset pull through as well? So really looking fundamentally at that ecosystem and the agility of the software product that you're looking at, I think, are fundamental to your next steps.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is, and we all know it's good fun with putting APKs on devices and finding that there's elements of SDKs that don't quite talk. But and that is important because I see clients now with Workflow Plus distributing onto more than one style of XR headset and phone and tablet and that. And I suppose, having native apps for those makes a massive difference because they are designed for the device you're using and it's using the right information. And I suppose the only thing I would add is flexibility and approach is key. I think one of the things I've found quite quickly, and it's good to watch, that we work with clients on proof of concept. Sometimes we do maybe like an extended supported trial period, which it may last 3-6 months. And it's amazing that you see the process come in its paper form or whatever has been done, and how it goes through so many evolutions, because actually when people realize that some things are slightly different, and a great example of that is if you're checking in a part of rail. You've got a straight of rail track and you've got the various bolts that are holding things on the lifts and the track and that. If you're on paper, you would check it from left to right. So you would check all 3 or 4 or 5 items as you go along.
Yes.
If someone does a form fitter and it's rigid, then it's expecting you to check one element all the way through, then go back to the beginning and check all that. So again, it's amazing how we look at those processes and then we've changed them so we're not changing the user experience, we're enhancing the user experience. And there's so many elements of how people do the job. And I suppose that's that flexibility and adaptability again, is because you engage with the business and thinking, right, what devices work best, what software works best. But again, it's that user experience that the end user is going to get from it. Is it increasing their job experience? And making it easy to use and making it benefit them is massive to get in the end use. So look, Jason, it's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I think and it will ring true for so many organizations, health and safety, and where it's going, and what the world's going to look like, I suppose, from a H&S and a risk point of view over the next 2, 3, 4 or 5 years. In my opinion, it's already here and organizations should be driving it now. But naturally everything takes its time. If people want to get hold of you, Jason, how can they get hold of you?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So Jason Stone, SafeReview XR are 2 terms you could find that by. You could email me. I haven't quite got to the stage. This is a very new company, so I haven't quite got to the stage where I've got a company email address, but jasonmstone@hotmail.com. I'm a bit traditional there. You can get across to me on that. Or always get in touch with Interware. I'm sure we've got connection there. So you can come to Interware and they'll be happy to bring me in to discuss with you what your requirements are when considering digitization of health and safety.
Excellent. Right, Jason, thank you again. Thank you so much. And everyone who listens to this, I appreciate you taking the time and I hope you found it interesting. Thank you very much. Bye.